Hopefully, maybe. I think we are. Just giving it a second for it to pull up. Pull up. Ooh, we have a lot today, folks. We have a lot today. All right, or as I like to say, we don't have time today. I got time today. Okay, give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to get some sharing get some sharing out the way. And while I'm doing that, well, let's go ahead and cover the elephant in the room, shall we?
Sound like Italy, a beautiful villa. Tried very hard to stop us from having this event tonight. He didn't like us having, they can have riots and they can have all sorts of things, and that's okay. You can burn up the house. That's okay, you know, you call it, we call this a protest, because if you call it a protest, you're allowed to have it. Good for that. So if anybody asks you outside, this is called a friendly protest, okay? It's true. Under my leadership, prosperity will surge. Normal life. Oh, I love normal life. We want to get back to normal life. And next year will be one of the greatest years we are going to have. I'm telling you, mark it down. And if I'm wrong, you'll say I was wrong. I'll say sorry about that. But
Oh, how the tangled web we weave. Oh, and that was not too long ago when all that came down. But let's go ahead and get started with this. Today's date, October 3rd, 2020, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, we are trying to work on, as I said, we are trying to work on our language here so we can try to make this as family friendly as humanly possible. But we are going to have to let some cuss words slip because Oh, it's going to be an interesting podcast. But for all those who are watching, welcome. I would be remiss to sit there and say that over the last 48 hours that we have found out that the president and first lady have tested positive for the coronavirus. And all I can sit there and say when I first heard the news was,
guess what, bitch? Coronavirus!
okay, that was completely wrong of me, but I don't apologize for that. Um, yes, I mean, if anything, this came from the guy who sat there and said, I will not wear a mask unless I have to, who had multiple gatherings where social distancing wasn't encouraged, and you had people shoulder to shoulder. I mean, at one point, it is how do we sit there and say with absolute certainty that this was bound to happen, aside from watching The Simpsons? Because I don't know about you guys, when I looked at that, I was like, oh, this is poetic justice. I kind of want to think. It kind of reminds me of a meme that I saw on Facebook, where they took a meme from the Last Dance when it was about Jordan and the Bulls, and Jordan always had that one look and said, "I took that personally." There was one where they put Trump's face saying, "I don't remember coronavirus," and you have a picture of a virus with Jordan's body head saying, "And I take it personally." Then, and I'm sorry, a lot of people are going, "Oh, that's horrible. The president is sick. What does that mean for our country and things of that nature?" First and foremost, hold on, because we really shouldn't get that too far along with the president's health. But we really need to look at exactly, before we can actually get to that, we really do need to see, honestly, how we got here in chronological order.
1,000 Americans have died from COVID-19. That's more deaths than any other country in the world. Although we account for only about 5% of the world's population, the United States has nearly 21% of deaths as of mid-September. Additionally, the United States is the only major industrial economy to have its unemployment rate triple due to COVID-19. How did we get here? We compiled information from the past 7 months to piece together what happened. It started with President Trump reportedly ignoring intelligence warnings.
President Trump was warned over and over again that his administration wasn't ready for a pandemic. In January 2017, about 2 months after President Trump is elected, the Defense Department puts out this pandemic response report, which notes that the most likely and significant threat is a novel respiratory disease like the coronavirus, and warns of a shortage of ventilators, face masks, and hospital beds.
Fast forward to March 2020, that's exactly what happened.
America is not prepared, and nurses are not being protected.
I am very frustrated and I am very afraid. Not because I am faced with taking care of COVID positive patients, but because I go there unprepared, unprotected.
I felt like I was working in a war zone. So basically, I just spent the last 13 hours treating 2 critically ill COVID patients on the vent, basically by myself. And this is my new normal for the next however many months that it takes for this virus to die down. So, I'm already breaking. So for f***ing sake, people, please take this seriously.
Meanwhile, President Trump actively downplayed the severity of the virus from the time he was briefed of its existence, possibly as early as November 2019, to his most recent insistence that he could not have done more to stop the spread. Let's take a look at just a few highlights of how President Trump handled the coronavirus. On January 7th, Trump privately discussed the threat of the virus with Bob Woodward on a tape that Woodward released in September.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
Publicly, when asked whether he was worried, Trump said,
"No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine."
January 30th, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency. That night, President Trump held a rally.
President Trump continued to hold rallies, go golfing, and spread misinformation about the coronavirus through January and February.
A lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though.
Though by March he was forced to stop holding rallies and going golfing, the misinformation continued.
You treat this like a flu. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low.
The Woodward tapes prove he knew that wasn't true.
This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
While Trump knew of the deadliness of the disease, he was saying things like,
"It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear."
As we're all painfully aware, the coronavirus did not just disappear. As cases rose, personal protective equipment, hospital bed capacity, and healthcare workers' safety plummeted.
I don't know. I just feel like there's only so much anyone can take. I'm tired of walking into rooms and your patient's dead. You just walk into a room and there's a dead body there. I'm tired of calling families and telling them that news.
In an effort to stop the spread, doctors and celebrities alike took to social media to plead Americans to stay home.
So you've heard about flattening the curve. This is what that curve means. The number of cases of coronavirus, if we don't do anything besides just what we've been doing, if we follow other countries' leads, it's basically exponentially growing. It means it doubles to triples every 2 days or so, roughly. And this is the healthcare system capacity. That's a line. If we don't do anything without protective measures, we're going to end up here, above the ability to take care of everybody. What that means is that all these people, and probably more, die.
I got a message for all you young people out there who think that it's business as usual. It's not.
We need to stop the spread of this virus, and we can only do it together.
Everyone can be a carrier. We got to be smart.
Let's act like we live in a community, not just by ourselves.
As people hoarded toilet paper and wiped out grocery stores, the death toll rose steadily.
I lost another patient to COVID-19 yesterday. When her heart stopped, I broke her ribs and her sternum, trying to help her and save her life, even though I knew in my heart it was futile.
This is truly scary and nobody is taking it seriously. I want to jump through my phone and strangle people that are on the beach or out with their friends still.
Despite insistence from healthcare workers and medical professionals that the coronavirus was a dangerous threat, President Trump continued to mislead Americans.
Because people get better. I mean, most people are getting better. Most, by far, the people, you get better.
He even started pushing the drug hydroxychloroquine, despite medical experts on his own task force saying that there was no proof that the drug was an effective treatment for COVID-19.
If chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine works, or any of the other things that they're looking at that are not quite as far out, but if they work, your numbers are going to come down very rapidly. So we'll see what happens, but there's a real chance that they might work.
Is it possible that your impulse to put a positive spin on things may be giving Americans a false sense of hope?
No, I don't think so. Many doctors, and I've read many doctors, they can't believe the great job that we've done.
It pains me to say this, but it really was an unmitigated disaster, what the Trump administration has done.
There is a direct correlation between the way the Trump administration handles this crisis and how many Americans will die.
Testing in the United States was virtually unavailable nationwide until the summer, despite the World Health Organization offering tests to the White House in February. The Trump administration refused the tests, saying we'd produce our own. Speaking of producing our own medical resources, people were forced to make homemade masks due to a shortage of PPE. But regardless of the shortage, for months there wasn't really a clear message on whether or not we should be wearing masks.
So with the masks, it's going to be really a voluntary thing. You can do it. You don't have to do it. I'm choosing not to do it, but some people may want to do it, and that's okay.
Mr. President, there was a lot of interest about whether you would end up wearing a mask today. Could you just take us through your thought process of why you decided not to wear a mask?
I had one on before. I wore one in this back area, but I didn't want to give the press the pleasure of seeing it. And your second question was? I couldn't hear you. Can you take it up because I cannot hear you?
I'll just speak louder, sir.
Oh, okay, good. You want to be politically correct. Go ahead.
Somehow, perhaps because the president used coded language like politically correct, staying at home and wearing a mask became politicized.
There's no pandemic. Media is the cancer.
For heaven's sake, open the barber shops. Open the hair salons. We need haircuts, okay? We gotta buy food. We gotta go to work.
I don't wear a mask for the same reason I don't wear underwear. Things gotta breathe.
And just like that, anti-maskers became a thing.
We will get together and do a citizen's arrest on every single human being that goes against the freedom of choice.
We are asking for much. We are asking for compassion. We are asking you to value human lives over your freedom.
Let me feel safe. I have family that I have to come home to, and the way things are looking, this isn't gonna get any better. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I don't want anybody I love to die, and I don't want to die.
People are gonna die. They die no matter what.
Yes, people die. Death is in fact part of life. But 200,000 deaths in a matter of months is not just collateral damage. Analysis of data from the Institute of Health and Metrics Evaluation suggests that tens of thousands of US deaths could have been prevented if President Trump had issued physical distancing guidelines even 2 weeks earlier, when he had already been warned of the threat for months. The 200,000 dead were real people with real families. And still, people are not taking the pandemic seriously. The pandemic, however, doesn't care if you're tired of it. In July, the US set a new record for daily cases, topping its peak from April.
Today has been one of the worst days by far.
Started about 3 weeks after my state reopened, which was May 15th, when the governor pushed forward with a lot of reopening activities, and many people kind of went back to work, literally, physically, mingling with each other, kind of almost like before, almost like we don't have a pandemic. Unfortunately, we still do.
I had a mom and grandmother drive themselves into my hospital, and only one drove home.
I don't know. I just feel like people think just because we're like a healthcare worker that we are somehow immune to this, and we're not. I cried the whole way home in the Uber tonight, and the driver was like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" I was like, I don't think people understand how stressful this job is. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but it's so stressful. I wish sometimes people would just understand to give us a break.
Here's the thing. We can give healthcare workers a break. By wearing masks, by practicing physical and social distancing, and by staying home when we feel sick. As much as it sucks to hear, please hear this. The pandemic is not over, but we can all do our part to help ensure the health and safety of our fellow Americans.
Okay, and that was now this. Really, I wanted to show that just because of the fact of the matter is that is literally how we got here with the pandemic. It all started, unfortunately, and I hate to bring it back to this, it all started with Dorito. Dorito himself, actually beforehand, I didn't cover this in the video, but former President Obama, actually when he left the administration office, set up a pandemic response team, as well as a very detailed plan that he gave to Congress and the Trump administration on how to deal with pandemics, considering that the Obama administration had to deal with the H1N1, also known as the swine flu virus, in which 14,000 people lost their lives to it. So, with those things in place, Trump decided back in 2018 that we didn't need them. That he decided to go ahead and dismantle and fire those that were in that pandemic response group. And at the same time, claimed that the previous administration, otherwise Obama, did not sit there and tell him or the Congress give a plan on how to deal with these actual things, which we now know that's BS. And so I also want to point that video out because, again, with the mask debate, oh dear God, I cannot tell you the level of stupidity. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to be blunt about it. The level of stupidity that anti-maskers have. It's not ignorance anymore. It's stupidity. It's you want to be ignorant, okay, that's fine, but you cannot argue with facts. Many people have said I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm sorry, I still wear a mask. I still wear a mask that my girlfriend, hi honey, who actually made a mask for me, and I wear it out every chance I get. Why? Because I'm being cautious of others, and even though I may not have the coronavirus, I might not be I might not be a carrier, but again, masks work. There is no argument on this. Masks work. Social distancing works. And if we started doing those things from Jump Street, imagine where we would be better off. But no, the current course of actions that we're on have led us to this, and especially this will fact the matter, like my home state of Tennessee, specifically Nashville. Governor Lee has decided that he wants to push forward with lifting all restrictions and opening all businesses at full capacity. And I keep saying this is the same thing that DeSantis in Florida is doing. And I can't tell if we're trying to have a hold my beer contest between Tennessee and Florida. Nashville cases are still continuing to rise. This is not going to be a good idea to open us up like we're all hunky-dory. I get it. You're cooped up. You don't always want to be at home. I completely and utterly get it. But again, other countries have imposed this type of lockdown situation months before we decided to, and they are way better off than we are. I have yet to find, I point this out, guys, to name a country that actually did extensive lockdown procedures at the same time that we got this, at the same time the virus started infecting both countries. You'll notice that the country that was more stringent upon their lockdown procedures eventually released them because cases are so low that it almost went to some sense of normalcy. Whereas in America, you have people that are going to sit there and literally fight you over the fact that they just choose not to wear a mask. At this point, I cannot say anything else except how dumb can you be to ignore science on this? I mean, you can call it beliefs, you can call it whatever you want to, but you cannot argue with science because science is facts whether you believe it or not. That's all I'm saying. But with that being said, I usually go on to the next part of this. Like I said, let's. I know, guys, you're gonna hate this part. We are gonna talk about the debate. With the first debate between, if you can call it that, between Biden and Dorito. And I've said this before I play this clip. Trump does not debate. He doesn't. He doesn't know how to debate. He has no facts or legs to stand on. So therefore, he has to be louder, be obnoxious, interrupt, always because he believes he's being the dominant person in the room, when really he's just being the loud, obnoxious jackass we all know. So, and of course, the fact checkers had a wonderful time with Dorito on debate night.
Trying to deflect criticism of his handling of the coronavirus pandemic by claiming former Vice President Biden would shut down the country if he were in office. Listen to this.
He wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country.
All right, Daniel, what are the facts?
Wolf, this is, again, false. Joe Biden has not expressed any desire to shut down the country. He has not presented any plan to shut down the country. Here's what happened. In an August interview with ABC, Biden was talking about the importance of listening to scientists on the pandemic. And he was pressed about what he'd do if scientists said we need to shut things down. He said in that case, he would shut it down. But he didn't say this was his intent. And he walked back these comments after the interview. He said in September, there is going to be no need, in my view, to be able to shut down the whole economy. Now, it's also worth noting, Wolf, that presidents can't themselves shut down the whole economy. So bottom line, Biden has expressed a willingness to do some sort of shutdown if recommended by scientific experts to combat the virus. But it's false to say that he wants a shutdown or is planning for one. Wolf?
Let's turn to another key moment, Daniel, in the debate about the coronavirus pandemic. Listen to this exchange between the former vice president and the president.
This is the same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically,
That was
you know that. That was said sarcastically.
And so here's the
All right, so Daniel, the president claimed he was being sarcastic when he talked about injecting bleach. Was he?
He just wasn't, Wolf. He just was not being sarcastic when he mused in April about injecting disinfectant to combat the virus. I realize it's kind of weird to fact check whether someone was being sarcastic or not, but this is an egregious rewriting of history. We all saw what happened. Trump was dead serious. What happened was he looked in the direction of medical experts, including Dr. Deborah Birx, and he said, and I quote, "And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see, it gets in the lungs, it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it would be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with, but it sounds interesting to me." So bottom line, Wolf, Trump's sarcasm claim is just false.
Yeah.
In the words of Gomer Pyle, surprise, surprise, surprise. Not surprising. But then again, it's one of those things where I sit there and say, we should not be surprised that Trump does not tell the truth. And what do you say, Alex? Trump does not use an actual debate strategy. It's called a Gish Gallop. The Gish Gallop is a technique used during debating that focuses on overwhelming an opponent with as many arguments as possible without regard for accuracy or strength of the arguments. Oh, wow. We used to call it bullshit, but okay, it actually has a name. Thanks, Alex. I mean, usually I just say, oh, that's a name. I usually call it bullshit, but it actually does have a strategy. Gish Gallop. Huh. Cool. Thanks, Alex. But there was also one thing I did want to point out was because the one thing I will point out, two things I'll point out from the debate before we move on to the next piece of information. Thank you for watching me this far. Joe Biden had this look at Doritos' face that reminded me of a certain song. And I just want to play at least 30 seconds. Oh, I love that song. It's just, Joe Biden had that look on his face like, you about to catch hands. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Biden, will you shut up, man? Was probably how we should treat 2020. As far as not only 2020, but as far as how we treat Dorito on this. Credit goes to Philip DeFranco on me learning that term. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, Alex. So there are also two things to take away from the debate. One of them, I'm going to be honest, was when he said this, and this was really fucking disturbing.
Criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared to specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead,
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white
supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his FBI, FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous,
radical
gentlemen,
group. We're now moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
They'll overthrow you.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's...
So, aside from watching two grumpy old men argue, it was a thing where he sat there and said the night, which didn't cover in the clip. Of course, he was asking to denounce white supremacy, and Dorito said, "Give me a name." He also sat there and pointed out the Proud Boys, in which he also sat there and told the group to stand back and stand by. I don't know about you guys, but when I sit there and hear someone tell a group to stand back and stand by, they're going to take it pretty much to a certain point. In which, actually, after Google searches after the debate, people want to know who were the Proud Boys and who they stand for, because we already know about Antifa. Just like Joe Biden has said, the FBI has concluded that Antifa is not a group; it is an ideology. So therefore, it's not a terrorist group. You know, like the Aryan Brotherhood, the KKK, white supremacy, nationalists, those type of people. Those terrorist groups. But unfortunately, we could not get Dorito to give a name because he's too busy talking about the Proud Boys and those that stand up for him. And for all those that don't know who the Proud Boys is and how it got started, well, you're in for a treat. I'll give you that.
Gang called the Proud Boys.
We will kill you. That's the Proud Boys in a nutshell. We will kill you. We look nice. We seem soft. We have boys in our name. But like Bill the Butcher and the Bowery Boys, we will assassinate you. Now, part of the reason I agree to do the talk is because I'm a... This is a war.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
I'll say it once and I'll say it again. The most dangerous group in America is pretty much white terrorism, because it will never be named. At the same time, as you can see, it actually is allowed and accepted by law enforcement in some cases. So that's actually just a short snippet of what the Proud Boys are. They are a terrorist group. If you look at exactly the creator as actually the founder and what he wants to say and what he stands for. And let's be honest, and there's a reason. I've said this once before, many times on this podcast. The exact reason why Dorito will never announce white supremacy is because he does not want to eliminate his voter base, which is pretty much made of racists, xenophobes, pedophiles, perverts, and just pretty much everybody else that looks at Trump like this wet dream of their ideology, their golden calf, if you will. If your golden calf was wearing a toupee and just looks like he was overweight. Aside from that, guys, we're going to keep on moving forward on this. Also, the other news that has actually came out was the fact of the end of the New York Times in first reporting this after getting 2 decades of Trump's taxes, and, well, we already knew he's a fraud.
First of all, I paid a lot, and I paid a lot of state income taxes, too. Being a businessman has been a great experience for me. I've loved it. I've always loved business. I've always been good at building things, and I've always been very successful at making money.
Will people be surprised at the rate that you pay?
I think they'll be surprised at how little
lower or higher
I pay.
than
No,
expected?
they're going to be surprised at how little I pay. I fight like hell not to pay a lot of tax. And you know what? Every politician probably does. I watched others where they say, oh, I want to pay tax. I fight like hell not to pay tax. I hate the way the government spends my money. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time. The IRS does not treat me well. They treat me like the Tea Party, like they treated the Tea Party. As a real estate developer, I have very, very little debt. A person named Ivanka Trump, does everybody know? Because my hair, I don't know about you, but it has to be perfect.
You know, this is a place that's really special to myself. It's really special to my brother, my father, really the whole family. I mean, this is really our compound.
won't he release his tax returns? And I think there may be a couple of reasons. First, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Second, maybe he's not as charitable as he claims to be. Third, we don't know all of his business dealings, but we have been told through investigative reporting that he owes about $650 million to Wall Street and foreign banks. Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So
that makes
if
me
he's
smart.
paid...
Amazing, amazing, isn't it? And amazing and also infuriating that when you really look at the simple fact of the matter of that when that expose came out, that they said that he only in his last year paid $750 in taxes, whereas the rest of us paid quite a substantial amount more. It amazes me so that he sat there and thinks, well, that makes me smart. No, that means that, again, if you were truly smart and you were a shrewd businessman, that you wouldn't still be talking about releasing your tax returns 4 years later, almost working on a decade now. I mean, at one point, somebody's got to sit there and go, come on, man. When are you going to stop lying to us? That's what I want to know. Even more so, guys, it's just the whole idea, like I said, there is a lot of smoke, and when you think about it, he actually, and then if you believe other reports that have came out, that he's lost, and of course he's lost more. He's up to his eyeballs in debt. He owes everybody. If anything, he's the reverse Richie Rich, if you think about it. So, you have to think of it this way. A person who's his eyeballs in debt, who comes off as this charismatic, smart, savvy, shrewd, rich businessman, is nothing more than a con man. Especially the simple fact of the matter is, who spends $70,000 on hair? If 70 grand gets you that type of wig, man, somebody lied to you. I was like $70,000 on that dead animal you call a toupee? Really? Especially since it's on The Apprentice, which is also, again, another example of how Trump runs a business into the ground. And I kind of feel like the Simpsons calling this when I sat there and said he is going to run his business. He's going to run the country the same way he runs his business. He's going to run into the ground, apply for bankruptcy, and then walk off like nothing happened. We should not be surprised he realized, I'm sorry, Mr. President, you can't put the entire country, you can't put the United States of America into Chapter 13 bankruptcy. It doesn't work that way. But speaking of other news, aside from the president and first hostage, First Lady Melania Trump, testing for coronavirus. Hope Hicks, the presidential aide, also testing for coronavirus, possibly for coronavirus. And we just found out today that, again, I'm not trying to take pleasure out of this, but at the same time, I really am. It's poetic justice, if you will, that even this person got it.
This is from Kellyanne Conway. This is a breaking news. Tonight, I tested positive for the COVID-19. My symptoms are mild, light cough, and I'm feeling fine. I have begun a quarantine process in consultation with physicians. As always, my heart is with everyone affected by this global pandemic. I was watching the video of this Rose Garden.
And I just want to cut it right there, just because, again, Kellyanne Conway, probably the person who sat there and gave us alternative facts, sat there and said, well, he's your president whether you like it or not. Sat there and said, well, I don't have any influence on the president. Sat there and went on multiple interviews after interview after interview, lying her way through her teeth, and doing it with a straight face. Amazes me so that now she's tested positive. And the funny part about this whole situation, guys, is that I want to present this picture. And I know it's not going to be very clear, but I'm going to try to do my best here. So I wanted to blow this picture up. I actually paused it so that way you guys can actually sort of talk about it. This was the Rose Garden interview. And there's some things I want to point out here. One, that's Kelly Conway right there. That's Hope Hicks in the background. That's the presidential campaign director for Trump's Next for campaign. And you'll notice one thing about this picture. that pretty much everybody, well, fuck social distancing apparently, but only 3 people are wearing masks. Of course, you see the president's AG and personal attorney, William Barr, there as well, and Mike Pence up in the corner as well, and of course, various Joint Chiefs of Staff. All of them, outside of certain people, which now 4 people in this shot, are all wearing masks. Everybody else is not. So how it's just, and I'm just thinking to myself, as I really did see that, I can only think of the simple fact of the matter that other coronavirus positive cases are bound to come out. Because if I'm almost certain everybody in that picture had gotten has actually gotten it. That's the only thing that I can think of that actually makes sense to do. Just because of the fact of the matter is that if they've all contracted it from a certain event, it must have been that event at the Rose Garden, where, as you can tell, no social distancing was done. Very few people were wearing masks, and I guarantee those people wearing masks, 9 times out of 10 will probably test negative for coronavirus. Joe Biden, when he did his debate, also got tested again. He was actually negative. But then again, he does believe in actually doing social distancing in masks. So again, if you're going to take any theme from this, guys, is that masks actually work. And also, there was another person in that picture, also the Supreme Court Justice nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, or I like to call her a conservative's wet dream, because they are pushing, and I do mean pushing, for her to be confirmed before the election. Why? Because Republicans have a few goals in mind. One of them is to reverse a key Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade. For all those that have been under a rock, Roe versus Wade is what allows a woman of choice to if she chooses to have an abortion, that it is legal. How can I put this ever so nicely? I'm going to do my best. Several pro-life individuals and certain people of a religious faith, I'm not going to say specifically who they are, but they believe that, abortion is wrong, and you're killing a baby, not a fetus. And so they don't like the fact that other women out there have the choice of doing that and not going along with their views. So that's the reason why conservatives, because again, most conservatives are usually pro-life, now look at Roe versus Wade, and they already have a Supreme Court bench that is already leaning conservatively, because there are a lot of conservative judges already on there that actually outnumber the Democratic judges. Now, if Amy Coney Barrett was to be nominated, because she is a hardcore Catholic who believes in religion first and law second, would be the swinging key factor that could actually make Roe versus Wade obsolete. And that is the fear for a lot of women out there, because it's 2020 and we still have to limit a woman, and for some odd reason we still feel the need to limit a woman based on her choices, whereas men are completely unrestricted. So like I said, it is a dangerous precedent, but at the same time, the breaking news with that is that even though she was there at the Rose Garden, it is unknown of whether or not she has tested positive for coronavirus. But it doesn't stop Republicans, because Republicans, especially Turtle Mitch McConnell, will still go on his word, because keep in mind, Mitch McConnell single-handedly blocked Obama from actually filling up a Supreme Court justice seat, and yet he's all for it. So again, Kentucky, I beg of you, Kentucky, do us all a favor. Kick him out. You have the ability. You have the choice. Please, oh please, send McConnell packing, and I thank you. But moving right along, guys. There is speaking of the first hostage before she tested positive for coronavirus, she was caught whining on tapes. And I say whining because there's just no other way I could play this.
Role as First Lady and some of her duties, including Christmas at the White House. I want to play that.
They say I'm complicit. I'm the same like him. I support him. I don't say enough. I don't do enough.
No,
where I am, I'm working like my ass off.
I know.
That Christmas stuff that, who gives a about Christmas stuff and decoration, but I need to do it, right?
Yeah, but Imagine 100%. You have no choice.
And okay, and then I do it, and I say that I'm working on Christmas, planning for the Christmas, and they said, "Oh, what about the children that they were separated?" Give me a break. Where they were saying anything when Obama did that?
I know.
I cannot go. I was trying to get the kid reunited with the mom. I didn't have a chance. Needs to go through the process and through the law.
But here's my thing. Hear what you just said. But instead of that, if your messaging, you were so loved.
They would not do the story. We put it out. They would not do the story.
I'm telling you.
You would not believe it. They would not do the story because they would not do the story because they are against us because they're liberal media. Yeah, if I go to Fox, they will do the story. I don't want to go to Fox.
It's so interesting. I mean, one, there's to hearing her being hostile toward, decorating the White House for Christmas, I certainly doesn't jive with, the Fox whole idea. I mean, if we're talking about a war on Christmas, it's funny that she would be leading that. But certainly it's one of those traditional roles, and I don't know. It's fascinating to hear her talk like that.
I think Melania has an internal conflict, and just back to the border for a moment.
Yeah.
I think that, as a mother, those maternal instincts in her were set off, and she really did care. But there is no husband to go home to, the leader of the free world, to discuss how she's feeling about that. So regardless of that, she steps in line and she, just decides that what she's heard and what she's been told is what the rule of law is in our country. And that's why I think, we are watching our democracy turn into a dictatorship at this point. And it's a brainwash type of cultish, people keep using that word so loosely, but, that's what I think of. And on the flip side, Melania, the traditions of First Lady and President have gone out the window with this couple. And I feel that if there were, there's so much that could be done. But again, no support, no understanding, and no...
So she can't go to the president and talk to him at the end. They don't sit around and talk at the end of the day or have dinner as a family and discuss things that are going on.
They do, but I think that the policy is going to rule out always, and Donald is in charge of that. Melania, again, as the person with more emotion than Donald, has to, again, like I keep saying, it is about towing the line.
So I find this completely and utterly fascinating. Because honestly, it just sounds like whining to me. I did not hear whining from Michelle Obama. I didn't hear whining from Barbara Bush. I didn't hear whining from Laura Bush. I didn't hear whining from Hillary Clinton. I didn't hear whining from any first lady that was actually part of the White House, because there are certain duties that they are expected of and that they perform. And yet, the one person that gets in there wants to whine about her duties. The one person that wants to get in there wants to whine about how the world looks at her. The one person that is in there wants to whine about, I try to do my best, but, I can't fight everybody. Again, this is so much whining that I'm just like, you know what? For a person that sits there and says, well, I try to unite kids with their parents, but they need to follow the law. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't you come here on a genius visa and there's nothing intelligent so far you said? You came in on a visa that was actually bought and paid for. You basically played Donald Trump as a sugar daddy until you got pregnant, and then when you got married and he became president, you daisy-chained your parents over here and they became American citizens and not one question was asked. And yet you're going to talk about following the law. Right. At the same time, well, everybody expects me to do the Christmas decorations. Yes, it's expected of every first lady to decorate the house. Been that way since the second president. Well, it's just that I'm expected. Who does all this Christmas shit? It amazes me so how her lackadaisical view of being first lady. Because I said it best. I said it best, and I'll still say it to this day. I still say Mrs. Obama did more as a first lady than possibly more presidents have done in their first term outside of the White House. She started a food program, exercise, bringing awareness to literacy and to introduce literature and culture in so many areas. She has actually done more outreach programs than most presidents have. So again, to hear Melania Trump complain and whine is exactly what I thought she was. She was somebody who did not want to be first lady, but was put into a role that she didn't want, so she does what she usually does. She whines and complains. And you think for anybody that's actually listening, who's ever actually in an office like that, you have to assume that all your calls are monitored and recorded and eventually will be put on CNN so that person can come up. Hence the former friend part. But then again, I shouldn't be surprised by that. But we do actually have another job report, a couple of jobs report actually. One of them being that the worst is to be confirmed from the coronavirus fallout. No matter how many states try to reopen businesses back to full capacity, it's just the fact that some jobs may never come back to the U.S.
Getting back to normal. CNN has a back to normal index that shows the economy is only 79% of the way back, which means we've got a long way to go. What are the obstacles that you're seeing?
Well, I think what we're looking at in the latest batch of economic data is a rise in permanent joblessness. In the month of August, permanent joblessness rose by 12.4%. Those who are out of a job, this is not a furlough, this is not a temporary layoff in nature. They're at the highest level since 2013. And because we've seen so many others, millions of those who are still classified as being temporarily laid off move into being in that situation for 15 to 26 and beyond weeks long, we know we're anticipating, there's a big debate that's broken out in the economic community that we're going to see this rising permanence increase in the coming months. In other words, the 8.4% unemployment rate that we saw in August might be as good as it gets for a while. We could see that start to tick up as demand destruction continues to percolate through the economy. We don't think it sounds good what you describe, Allison. We've had 79% of what was lost recouped. But if you think about how long it's been since February was, that's a very long time for there to be 20% of the nation's largest economy still offline. And that means that we're starting to see major law firms, white collar jobs beginning to disappear again, because demand has been destructed in some ways permanently. You're going to be speaking with a conference organizer shortly, and they can attest to the fact that a lot of business travel has yet to come back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of businesses if you look around, just empty storefronts. It's really stunning, isn't it? I mean, are we going to wind up seeing some sort of cyclical movement in just maybe entrepreneurship or some sort of change once we are out of this because of the permanency of the loss of these kinds of businesses?
Well, I do hope that there is a massive wave of innovation, that there's a massive wave of entrepreneurship that's coming behind all of these closures. Something that concerns me, however, is that a lot of these companies that have gone out of business are going to have kind of this stain of debt on their records. And I hope that that is not the case, because you're reading about restaurants that have been in business for 35, 45 years. You saw Luby's restaurant chain. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. It was someplace I always went with my grandparents. You saw it go out of business and liquidate all of its locations yesterday. My concern is that we need a fresh batch of entrepreneurs who have individually clean balance sheets and the ability to take on debt to grow the next generation of U.S. businesses as a phoenix would rise from the wake of any massive fire. That's the hope. But the concern, again, is what the state of entrepreneurs in America are going to be like, how much debt they're.
And she does have a point to a certain extent. Unfortunately, industry jobs are disappearing, especially in my field of IT jobs. IT jobs are being basically re-reviewed, and they're being reevaluated, and that some companies are trying to cut and save money as much as possible. And let's be honest, when you work at a company where where they're trying to downsize or restructure or reorganize, they always start at the bottom. They very rarely start at the top unless you're just that fat cat that they can just give a golden parachute and kick out the door. If you're not them, then chances are you're probably on the low end of the totem pole. The whole idea about like I said, the coronavirus has actually slowed down jobs so much that it might have gotten to the point to where some companies have shifted to saying we can still focus and run with less people, more automation, probably more overseas work or things of that nature. It's amazing to me when you look at the job market. The simple fact of the matter is we're not talking more about universal income, that we're not talking more about more assistance to individuals who where the job market is not there, but they still have bills and things of that nature. It's amazing that we're not talking about those things, because if you listen to the two main political parties, all you basically hear is well, we got to get Americans. One side is saying we have to get Americans back to work. Another side is saying that Americans need assistance, because there's still a lot of people out there still hoping we get a second stimulus check. And I still sit there and say it among them. It is amazing to me how many people, which I can understand, $1,200 can do something. It can't do everything. But it's amazing to me how one country that we're connected to has figured out that their people need monthly assistance, no questions asked, until the pandemic is over. Whereas the banks have been bailed out, the farmers have been bailed out, automakers have been bailed out, but the American people have yet to be bailed out. It is amazing to me that you still have two parties in Congress. One that actually has the right idea with Democrats, because they just passed another $2.2 trillion HEROES Act that would actually include a second round of stimulus checks as well as the possibility of monthly checks. But I don't expect that to be heard by McConnell, because if anything, Mitch McConnell has actually pointed out, is just that being the Senate Majority Leader has its perks, because you can block anything that comes from the House. Which again, Kentucky, you have one job. Please help a brother out. But again, that is going to be our reality. That unfortunately, that most jobs just may never come back. Now, I did disagree with the entrepreneurial spirit, because even in this pandemic, people are finding ways of opening up businesses, even side businesses. I mean, travel business, selling, if you're good at making something, if you're good at baking, if you're, things of that nature, people are still making money. Or if you're good in stocks, because like I said, if you're like me and you're late to the stock market game, I actually bought some Apple stock, which was really good. I mean, I think when they were cutting their shares in fours, and Apple stock was for 1 day, Apple stock was like $53 a share, and I bought like 4. And I could actually sit there and say I never thought I would actually buy some Apple stock. But again, that's just the world we live in, that we do have to find different ways of income and things of that nature looking toward the future. Because if anything, coronavirus has shown us that it can make a very secure future very uncertain. But we still got 2 more stories before we get to our feel good segment. Just updates on the current case that we do have, especially the one involving Daniel Prude. Again, it's actually 2 parts of this. One is about the cover-up as far as the case of Daniel Prude, and of course, one is about the Rochester mayor herself being in trouble over campaign fraud.
Of a cover-up over Daniel Prude's fatal police encounter in Rochester, New York. Newly released emails show police leaders tried to keep body cam video of Prude's death a secret because they feared the public's response. TJ Holmes has the latest. Good morning, TJ.
George, good morning. There's a section of the police report where a police officer is supposed to fill in the victim type. Daniel Prude was initially identified simply as an individual, but someone came back and wrote on that police report, "Make him a suspect." That is just one of hundreds of documents we are now seeing that appear to show a coordinated, deliberate effort to change the narrative and also keep the public from seeing another video that would shock the country.
Are you Daniel?
This video of Daniel Prude's deadly encounter with police sparked outrage and protests in Rochester, New York. But police leaders, city and state officials appeared to work behind the scenes for months to keep the public from seeing it. That's according to newly released documents. Prude's brother Joe, speaking out exclusively to ABC since those documents were released, claims that from the start, the information being given to the family just wasn't adding up.
When it all came out, everything that I felt was the truth.
Prude died in March, but after George Floyd's death in May, Rochester officials became concerned about, quote, potentially violent blowback in the community to the video. A deputy Rochester police chief writing in an email, "We certainly do not want people to misinterpret the officer's actions and conflate this incident with any recent killings of unarmed black men by law enforcement nationally." The documents also showing that officials appear to discuss different tactics for delaying the video's release to the public, including inviting a lawyer for the Prude family to watch the video in a private meeting, provided he agrees to sign an agreement that he cannot scan, copy, or otherwise attempt to reproduce the information.
The documents that have now been released reveal an intentional and a detailed cover-up.
Rochester Police Union President Michael Mazzio thinks the documents are all about assigning blame.
I think that what we're seeing here is politics first, agendas first, and not what we should be focusing on, which is most important in this case, is to complete this investigation.
It also shows police were concerned about framing the narrative about the incident for the public. A suggested change to a police report was to call Prude a suspect. Prude died in the hospital a week after this March 23rd incident, captured on police body cam. Prude's family had initially called police to report he was having a mental emergency.
The next step for me and with them is to let my lawyers and them do what they do best, bring forth justice for the family.
Now, the 7 officers involved in the encounter with Prude have been suspended. The police chief was fired. The interim police chief, though, George, Mark Simmons, he was one of the people that the documents show was advocating for not releasing the video.
Okay, TJ, thanks very much for being our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, for more on this, Dan.
And that should tell you a lot. I mean, guys, I've been saying this, that law enforcement, for some odd reason, in these cases, and that's just Daniel Prude. Now, again, for Daniel Prude, don't remember, that was a guy who was police found was naked, and they claim he was spitting on them, so they decided to put a bag over his head and then roll him on his back, and then until where he was having asphyxiation issues, and then he died in the hospital. It is amazing to me that when you see something like that and his name on a sheet with no particular identification and the words "make him a suspect" is showing, and then they try to then say, well, no, that's not what we meant. And of course, they didn't even want to release the body cam footage because they were in fear of public response. Yes, you are afraid of people seeing the fact that you basically killed a man with a badge and a gun, and you expected what? A thank you? It is amazing to me now that, of course, you hear the officers were fired, the chief of police was fired, and the interim chief of police was one of the ones that advocated not allowing this to go public. This is why I sit there and say the police need to be police. And it's kind of funny, and I say this, and I'm sorry, I apologize. It's not kind of funny. It would be weird to have the police investigate themselves. It's like, we're going to investigate ourselves because we know ourselves best. No. That's like expecting a 2-year-old to go clean up a toilet that they made the mess on. You are good at making the mess, but you don't know how to clean it up. In the very simple sense that we have such a difficult time really listening to police when police sit there and say, oh, well, we can investigate ourselves. No, you can't. Because obviously when you release information like this, of course you're going to be very questionable. Because I would question everybody in that chain of command and everybody that's associated with that chain of command that really was for not releasing to the public should honestly be fired. And there's just no ifs, ands, and buts to that. And it's also in the same fact, that very same story, because the video wouldn't go into it. The mayor that actually fired that chief of police and their officers is already on indictment herself. Mayor Warren is under indictment for her 2017 campaign, in which they said that she broke campaign finance rules and committed fraud during her re-election campaign. Now, they didn't exactly say what the campaign finance rules and fraud was as of yet, but since they're moving forward with this case, there must be some evidence that they're trying to prove in court. I've said it before because I did mention this about I want to say about last year, I mentioned this in a podcast maybe, that this Rochester mayor was being investigated for campaign fraud. The thing about campaigns, and I say this before much, there's always going to be money in politics until we make a law that actually prevents that from happening. But again, we shouldn't be surprised that some people use campaign funds and then without clear rules can really use it the way they want to. I mean, look at all these people who suspend. And I said this before. Whenever someone says there's a difference between suspending a campaign race and ending a campaign race, because by campaign laws, if you're running for office and you end your campaign, any funds collected during that campaign must be given back to the point of originality, which means if it was donated or if it was donated by a group, a system, or a person, things of that nature, it has to be given back to the point of origin. However, if you say that you're suspending your campaign, then of course you can put the campaign on hold and you get to sit on that campaign money. Funny, isn't it? That, the difference between ending and suspending, if you suspend your campaign, you can hold on to the money that you've raised. If you end your campaign, you have to give it back. I'm telling you, until money is taken out of politics, which could be a long time before that happens, we're going to see stuff like this. And I wouldn't put it past to the mayor who is now claiming innocence in this. It would be interesting to see what goes forward, because now it's been indicted. That means the case is happily following. And also, there's also been news in the Breonna Taylor case, in which that I will go ahead and allow the video to explain for itself.
Kentucky Attorney General released 15 hours of audio tape from the 2.5-day grand jury investigation into Taylor's death after a judge ordered it. That grand jury did not charge any officers with Taylor's death and just one former officer with endangering Taylor's neighbors. The prosecutor said this at the time.
According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
That, of course, sparked outrage and protests. The tapes released today come after an anonymous member of the grand jury filed a lawsuit accusing the prosecutor of trying to deflect responsibility for the charging decision. ABC's Alex Perez has been poring over these newly released tapes and joins us now. Thanks so much, Alex. So let's start off with what we learned today about the case, especially about the question of whether those three officers announced themselves before barging into Breonna Taylor's home in the middle of the night.
Well, Lindsay, first of all, we can't punctuate enough just how rare it is to have a look at the grand jury proceedings at this point in the criminal case. Now, in terms of what we learned from these tapes when it comes to police barging in, we knew from before that officers were serving a no-knock search warrant, but we've learned through testimony that they say once they arrived there, they discussed the fact that Jamarcus Glover, that's Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend and sort of the center of the warrant, had been taken into custody earlier that evening. So they say because of that, they turned this into a knock and announce warrant. And so several officers testified that they actually knocked and identified themselves before barging in. Now, we know that Breonna's boyfriend, who was Kenneth Walker, who was inside the home with her at the time, the apartment, he says police did not identify themselves. But several officers in testimony contradicting what Kenneth Walker said. One officer saying they knocked on the door for at least 2 minutes, identifying themselves and then knocking, identifying themselves again, and then knocking. In testimony, one of the officers described those few chaotic seconds when they barged through that door and the gunfire began. Let's take a quick listen to some of that testimony describing the chaos.
I'm at the threshold of the door. I am immediately overwhelmed with bright flashes and darkness and what I describe as a movie reel that's doing that ticking where you see white and black and white and black. I know John is now not where he's supposed to be. There's nobody in front of me. John is now on the ground, or John is below me. And there's still these flashes happening, these vivid white white lights, followed by this darkness. And the room, and I don't see a room, I just see this hall. You know, it's like a surreal thing. Like, if you told me I didn't do something at that time, I believe you. If you told me I did do something, I probably believe you too. I think it's important for me to tell you so during this flashing light, I am seeing this human shadow figure. I don't think I said that, so I just want to say that. So larger than normal human shadow figure.
And so there in that audio recording, we hear one of the officers in testimony describing those few seconds, calling it chaotic, saying he saw a lot of flashing lights and then suddenly everything went dark, also saying that it happened very, very quickly. And Lindsay, we know it was in those seconds that Breonna Taylor was shot and died almost instantly there on the scene. Lindsay.
And as we heard earlier, the Kentucky Attorney General said publicly that 2 of the officers were, quote, justified in firing into Taylor's home because her boyfriend fired first. Do we know if the Attorney General said that to the grand jury, and was that the grand jury's conclusion as well?
Well, Lindsay, from listening to what the Attorney General has said publicly and hearing all of the information on these tapes, we know that the Attorney General never presented a case on those other 2 officers to the grand jury. So they did not reach any conclusion when it comes to those 2 other officers, because the Attorney General said from the beginning, because Kenneth Walker fired at them, they were justified in using their weapons, and so there was no case to move forward with the grand jury. They never heard anything on those other 2 officers, Lindsay.
And we also know that some of the grand jury proceedings were not recorded and made public. Why was that the case, and what was left off?
Well, Lindsay, the Attorney General says this is customary. The prosecutor's statements, their recommendation to the jurors, and the jury deliberations themselves, those things were not recorded, and because of that, were not part of this release that was made to the public today. The Attorney General says they just don't record those portions of it because that's not considered evidence. Only the evidence is recorded. So those moments, those things, we won't actually ever know, Lindsay.
Alex Perez.
Now let's think about that for a second. I know I said this in the 2 podcasts ago, that many prosecutors have all sat there and said this, that prosecutors and attorney generals, when presenting their case to a grand jury, they control everything. They control the type of jury that they want. They control the evidence they want to put out there. They control exactly the case they want to put forward. The prosecutors have all said there and said this. When they have something like that to where they can control the whole entire basis of, you can paint the narrative. It's not about presenting all the facts. You can paint the narrative. And that's exactly what Kentucky AG Daniel Cameron did. He didn't present all the evidence. He did not present all the facts. He only presented the view that he wanted those folks to have, so they can sit there and come to the same conclusions he did. That is completely messed up. Even more so that a juror is the one that actually brought this forward. Keep in mind, the only reason why this grand jury tapes are being released is because a juror sued, not the state, not anybody else. A juror within that actual group is suing the AG to actually get those tapes released because they sat there and they quoted, "We were not given all the facts. We were not told by additional officers. We were not told about the ballistics reports. We were not told about any of this stuff." So therefore, he or she in that situation felt bamboozled. And that's what I'm saying before. That's what I'm saying beforehand in this case with Breonna Taylor. It is amazing to me that it took, the optics of it all is that Daniel Cameron eventually just might get looked at as a person, even though his position was bought and paid for, even though he's somehow related to Mitch McConnell. The simple fact of the matter, he denied justice by not allowing all the evidence to be seen. Because trust and believe, if this was another Mohammed Noor situation, this would have been a reverse slam dunk. I'm just going to be honest about it. But that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on to our Feel Good News segment because we just actually ran through a lot of news, and I think we're still live on Facebook, so I think we might have passed that test, so yay. But, like I said, how the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of stuff. That is not so good news. Sometimes it's doomy, sometimes it's just depressing, and overall just really knocks the wind out of your sails. But hey, since we do this on the weekend, it's Saturday. Some of us have the day off, some of us unfortunately have to work. I apologize to you guys. But we try to do it great because, as fall's coming around, it's October. We're almost out of 2020 because this has been a year. So, but we do try to find stories to, make you smile, make you feel good, kind of put you in that positive spin to get through the rest of your weekend. And I start with this one because this is kind of like some Angels in the Outfield kind of stuff, where this grandpa had left a bucket of baseballs at this batting cages with this note, and I'll go ahead and read it. Hope someone can use some of these baseballs in the batting cages. I found them cleaning my garage. I pitched them to my son and grandson for countless rounds. My son is now 46 years old. My grandson is 23 years old. I am 72, and what I won't give to pitch a couple of buckets to them. They have both moved away. If you are a father, cherish these times. You won't believe how quickly they will be gone. God bless. P.S. Give them a hug and tell them that you love them every chance you get. Now, this story actually has been circling around social media about a grandfather who lives in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm sorry, I take that back. The grandfather actually lives in Montgomery, but the grandson that he mentions in the story lives in Birmingham, Alabama, a couple hours away. And it just really led to the whole idea of the grandson just finding out about this and the father. Really reaching out because so many people responded to this, because this is actually on Twitter, that so many people reached out on Twitter regarding this, and it really is, it tugs at your heartstrings, I'm not gonna lie, that, both the father and the grandson are reaching out to the grandpa to, rekindle with them, because if there's anything that you could take from that story, guys, aside from the fact that social media is definitely a powerful tool if need be, spend time with your loved ones. You never have said, man, I understand sometimes, life gets hectic. You're not around your parents or your aunts and uncles or your grandma or grandpa if they're still in your life. Life gets busy. But, you always want to make sure that you're making sure that you're saying you love them and that you hang out with them and spend time, because like you said, that time is fleeting. Time is short, folks. So, if you need to call your mom or call your dad or aunts, uncles, grandmothers, hey, a call never hurts. That's all I'm saying. But at least I thought that was pretty cool that they wound up that they are going to be spending more time together. Aside from that, this other video I have has been something I've been saying at the end of all my podcasts, and this person deserves it more because they went above and beyond on this girl.
Care worker in San Antonio was recently given an award for her frontline efforts to battle the coronavirus. But when she came home from work, she was not expecting this, a giant thank you sign planted on her front lawn.
Yes, you do. Don't deserve all of it. Yes, you do. It was so sweet.
Patra said, I don't deserve all this, but yes, she does. She was overcome with emotion when she saw this show of gratitude from everybody in her community.
Now, I've always sat there and said this, guys, at the end of all my podcasts. This is the reason why I sit there and say, if you see a doctor, you see a nurse's aide, or a doctor's aide, or environmental people that work in hospitals, just simply say thank you. You will be surprised, honestly, just the fact of you just saying thank you. They don't get enough praise. They certainly don't get paid enough, because if I was them, I'd be doing a coalition on getting these student loans wiped out personally, if you got them. But again, these people who are putting their lives on line on a daily basis, especially with the COVID-19 going around, and still taking care of sick people, the sick and injured. It doesn't take a lot to say thank you. And obviously you can see here, whoever did this sign went above and beyond, because that right there is what I'm talking about. Just simply saying thank you, not being a dick about it, and just going from there. That's truly what it's all about. But the last story I got, guys, I think this is adorable. I think this is cute because, like I keep saying, with this coronavirus and stuff out here, there are so many ways that you're seeing entrepreneurship actually happen. And even so much, I love to see younger kids, especially, and I'm going to be biased about it. I love to see black kids actually, flourishing at this time. And this seventh grader is really doing some things. And like I said, this kind of makes me hungry after watching this. You know what would be great? What would be great is if I could unmute myself and actually talk, and I just realized I apologize so much because I don't know how much was actually heard. Oh man, that's getting terrible. That's getting terrible. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna start. Oh wow. Okay, that's my bad moment. That's my bad moment. Because I'm pretty sure everything after the fact of me showing that video about the 12-year-old and the hot sauce, all that just probably got thrown out the window. So I'm going to go ahead and start again and say thank you everybody who has watched, who has liked, who has started watch parties, things of that nature. I certainly appreciate it. You definitely keep me going. And before I do get out of here, I am not the only cat that has podcasts, and I'm pretty sure that I'm being heard this time, so I'm going to start again. I'll start my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA on Facebook, as you can see this handsome mug right there, and of course Big BZA on all social medias. He does actually have several podcasts of his own. I'll start with the first one called the VSTs. Please ignore the Thursday at 12 a.m. because, he doesn't have that anymore, and I've still yet to get a graphic from him of all his shows. But the VSTs, or it's called his Intercast, is a news podcast. That news could be music, that news could be video games, that news could be trailers. I just love the show. The other one he actually hosts called Rhythmness, which is currently on hiatus right now. But you can definitely go onto his Facebook page and look up under his video section, and you'll be able to see previous episodes of Rhythmness that he's actually done. Aside from that, guys, he also has Random as Fuck with Uncle Beezy. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is a pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some videos make you think, some videos make you cry, some videos will just stick with you, as he always does them all to a theme. But all of them can be found under his Facebook page, and also his other one of Fonking Around, which I wanted to give a little bit of a snippet of, because this is basically him in his creative process. Now, usually, aside from him showing his whole entire setup, but that's him. He is actually a guy that likes to make beats and things of that nature. And like I said, the VSTs, which he also has as well, like I said before, if you just look up Big BZA, you'll be able to see his podcast, things of that nature, from there. And I'm going to stop him because I think this is the one where he decides to go into a rant. And we just don't have time for rants, Vaughn. But we always have time for rants on your show. But aside from that, like I said before, you can look up Big BZA on all social medias, but also look up Big BZA on Facebook. My other brother from another brother, Thomas Reed, who can also be found on Facebook right here. He's the guy with, well, he doesn't have a bald head. He kind of needs to change that. Basically his show is also on hiatus as well. But it's basically called To Be Determined, which you can look up by going to Thomas Reed on Facebook or 2TBD on YouTube. And as you can see here, he is a guy that likes to work out, especially when you see stuff like this. I wish I could make this up. Like I said, he is a guy that likes to work out. He is a guy about fitness, and he's actually a guy that needs a cameraman. So if anybody's willing to be a cameraman for this guy, when he works out, would be certainly great. Send all your resumes to Thomas's Facebook, because he definitely does need that. But as you can see, he is a guy that likes to work out. He is a guy about fitness. He is a guy that's literally all about just trying to be the better him. And I mean by the be the better him, I mean like trying to find something other than a tank top. I still mess him about the tank top because that's all he wears is tank tops. Hence why I call him tank top. But I still love him though. But he is a guy, as you can see, is about fitness, loves to work out, loves to do his best. At the same time, also really is all about helping others that want to do the same. So if you want to be just as ripped as this guy, or you want to be able to just simply do stuff like this, which I think is kind of interesting. When you want to be able to do stuff like that, which is basically him doing 6 inches off the ground and then doing Arnold shoulder presses, which is kind of funny because he also mocked me for doing Arnold shoulder presses, and now he's turning around doing the exact same damn thing. I find that interesting. But anyway, he is a guy, like I said before, you can look up Thomas Reed on Facebook, of course, 2TBD on YouTube, to basically see his podcast and just like, share, and subscribe from there. Now, as for yours truly, I do have a few podcasts of my own. I'll start with every Tuesday is the Burned Out Podcast from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. It is me and my IT storytelling podcast. As I said before, I'm a guy that works in IT, and I do have a plethora of stories of experiences with folks of how can I put this over so nicely, special category. So hopefully you find it funny, and if you do, that's great. And if not, I'm probably talking about you. You need to lighten up anyway, because honestly, it's really better for me, and because it's a lot less expensive than therapy. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is the How the Frack We Got Here podcast that you're currently watching right now. A little bit later tonight, between 8 to 10 p.m., will be the Off Limits podcast, the podcast that goes there, because with that podcast, we do talk about anything and everything, and I do mean anything and everything. And I'm still, like I said before, I'm still planning another very special episode of that podcast, and I say special because it definitely will be adult themed. I will let everybody know when that is, so if you do have kids, you can definitely avoid that. But I'm still looking forward to it because it's such a subject that I've been building for and really putting creative and really putting passion into, that I think I really want people to talk about, because that is the whole entire point of that podcast, is to get you talking about things that normally nobody wouldn't talk about, because we have to move forward in doing so. There are just simply some subjects that need to be addressed. And of course, every Sunday between 7 and 9 p.m. is my Get Bit podcast. That is GITBIT, in which I sit there and I talk about video games. I talk about television shows like Amazon The Boys, which, by the way, awesome show if you haven't seen it. Or even some weird ones like Ratcheted, which my girlfriend got me to watch, which again had me on pins and needles until the last episode, and I was kind of mad about that. But I talk about that on the show. I also talk about sports, even though right now the NBA might be wrapping up, the NFL may be shutting down, the MLB might actually be wrapping up, and we may be without sports again for a while. I talk about that as well. I also talk about comic books. I also talk about movies, especially the Marvel and DC universes. And of course, I do talk about video games, because if you've seen my setup around here, I am a video game fanatic. And also, I am starting my series about building my first mini ITX motherboard with my specifications on it. So if you've ever been interested in seeing how a computer is built, or just want to learn how to do it yourself and just want to follow me while you're doing it, it is perfectly fine, because I like to show people that, because it is very easy to get into the customization of building a PC and how fun it can be to actually extend your skill set. So with that being said, all of my shows can be found under my Facebook page of William Buchanan, or my YouTube pages, or their own Facebook pages. So if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can look them up by their names. So you can look up The Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, excuse me, and I got why did I just get tongue-tied just now? And Get Bit. I think I said all four of my shows. I think I said the Burned Out Podcast. I think I said How the Frack We Got Here. I think I did say the Off Limits Podcast, and I think I said Get Bit. And if I didn't, I'm saying it now, because apparently I'm having a brain fart. But all these shows have their own Facebook and YouTube pages, so you can definitely look them up and see from there. Aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll have to sit there and say before, like I said, I think we're at this point now that we shouldn't have to say it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Masks work. They work. They work. They work. Social distancing works. We need to start doing that. I know Nashville is reopening back up because idiot Governor Lee thinks that we need to, and a lot of people who are short-sighted and really need to actually reaffirm their own priorities, yes, I'm going to say it, are also agreeing with this, not realizing that COVID cases are increasing everywhere. Tennessee and Florida have the wrong idea about opening up completely. This will not solve any problems. This will just increase them. So, I will say this for the simple fact of the matter: the best way to actually resolve all this, guys, is to, one, use masks. It is beyond time to use masks. We've seen now that the president, being in the most secure bubble in the world, still got coronavirus. If it can get to the president, it can get to you. It's time to stop being fucking naive about it. Aside from using masks, social distancing, if you are sick, self-isolate, or if you're very sick, go to the hospital. Go to the ER and actually get care. COVID-19 has already taken out 200 plus people in the U.S., nearly 2 million people worldwide. And the funny part, and the messed up part about this is, most countries are actually recovering faster than we are. We are still knee deep in cases, while most of the rest of the world is trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. It is time to finally start doing the instructions that we should have been doing months ago, which we would have been well better off by now had we did. So, and aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll sit there and say is, like, again, thank a nurse, thank a doctor, thank a nurse's aide, a doctor's aide, or environmental people that work in the hospitals. Thank all those people. Don't be a dick about it. I know how guys can be about, women in curvy bodies in nurses scrubs, or women, lusting after doctors. don't be a dick. Just say thank you. It doesn't hurt or take much energy to say thank you for all that you do, because honestly, they're not being told that enough. They're not being given that enough. They're not being cared for the way they care for their patients, is all I'm saying. And also thank educators out there. Educators who are doing remote learning, who are still going to classrooms even though they shouldn't have to, and are still teaching kids. Also thank them as well, because the educators never get paid enough. They also don't get enough respect for it, because that is a profession that should be as high as law enforcement and everything else goes. But for the simple fact of the matter is, just say thank you, because again, I wish we could do more from our standpoint, but for the most part, it's letting them know that they are appreciated goes a long way. And also thank all essential workers, whether you're a gas station worker, grocery store worker, you're a truck driver, you're a delivery driver, you work in department stores, you work in grocery stores, you work in the United States Postal Service, you work in FedEx or DHL or UPS or any of those areas, or just any warehouse to where your job is basically keeping the rest of the world, the rest of the country running, while the rest of us try to ride this out. Thank you, because you guys really don't get enough said about that. Now, beyond that, guys, the one thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, the last thing I'll say is all about staying informed. This whole show is not trying to deliver it's not trying to deliver a narrative or agenda or anything of that nature. It is taking news from respected sites and literally giving you the facts as it is. We are informing you. We are not trying to change your mind. We are trying to inform you. Informing you with all the facts and allowing you to make up your mind for yourself, because that's how it used to be in the news. And even though there are many sites out there that are trying to do that, that is the whole point of this podcast, is to basically inform you. Because you can make a lot better. You can actually make a lot better decisions more than you're informed. Informed country can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed country, because an uninformed country got us Dorito, and that's how the Frack We Got Here. So, with that being said, guys, again, thank you all for watching. And if you're watching this on the playback, feel free to comment as if it's live, because I want to know your opinions. I know you Trump supporters will. But aside from that, like I said, let's look out for each other. It's time to stop being selfish. It's time to stop, let's drop the anti-masker and all this stuff. Let's actually come together. And if we do that, maybe, just maybe, we might actually be able to see 2021 from beyond our window. Aside from that, guys, thank you all for watching. I've been Will Buchanan. This has been How the Frack We Got Here. I am out. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.